Hello, I'm the real-life fake wizard. Earlier this week, Bloomberg journalist Jason Schreier claimed that Sony is pulling the plug on their single-player exclusive games shipping multi-platform. And because of this, PC gamers are furious. So let's be clear. Firstly, none of this is confirmed yet. Sony has made no official announcement, and the story hasn't been corroborated by any other journalists yet. However, the idea that Sony is pulling their multi-platform strategy is very important and worth digging into. The claim goes that live service games like Helldivers 2 and the upcoming Marathon will go multi-platform as scheduled because those games need massive player counts to survive. But the crown jewels, the narrative single-player experiences, are going back in the vault. And the internet is losing its mind. PC gamers are furious, anti-consumer, greedy, gatekeeping. Maybe. But if you're Sony and you're coming at this from a business decision, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not endorsing it, but I am going to explain their reasoning right now, right here on the Real Life Fake Wizard channel. Today's indie game shout-out is Strange Horticulture, an occult puzzle game in which you play as the proprietor of a local plant store. Find and identify new plants, pet your cat, speak to a coven, or perhaps join a cult. Use your collection of powerful plants to influence the story and unravel Undermere's dark mysteries. To learn more about this and hundreds of other indie games, visit our free indie game discovery network, fakeportal.com, or scan the QR code on your screen. Now back to the video. Part 1. The numbers don't lie. Let's look at some data here. The Sony PC ports like God of War, Horizon, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us have collectively generated an estimated $1.5 billion in gross revenue on Steam across roughly 43 million copies sold. That sounds impressive, right? Well, it certainly is a lot of money. So why would Sony even consider walking away from it? Well, let's look at some of their other numbers. Sony's Game and Network Service division generated $31.7 billion in revenue in fiscal year 2024 alone. So the entire PC experiment, with years of porting, optimization, QA testing, anti-cheat implementation, UI redesigns, customer support, produced revenue equal to about 5% of a single fiscal year in total. Let's look at individual titles. God of War Ragnarok on PC roughly moved 2.5 million copies on Steam, but it sold over 15 million on PlayStation. Spider-Man 2, 900,000 copies on PC, 16 million on PlayStation. Horizon Forbidden West, 850,000 on PC, over 8 million on PlayStation. The PC versions are selling 5 to 10% of what the console versions sell, and the trend is actually getting worse. It's not getting better. The sequels are selling slower than the originals on PC because of, well, many reasons. Like the novelty has worn off, these games don't get discounted on Steam often, the pent-up demand has been served because you can buy them now, and maybe the games just aren't good enough sometimes. Are we allowed to say that? What's left is a shrinking pool of buyers generating diminishing returns. 76% of PlayStation software sales are now digital through the PlayStation Store. That means the 76% majority of gamer purchases are not going to GameStop or Best Buy or even Amazon. And on the PlayStation Store, Sony takes a 30% platform cut on every purchase. Every copy of Call of Duty, every copy of Grand Theft Auto 6, every copy of God of War, and every indie game, Sony gets 30%. When the same person buys a game on Steam instead, Valve gets the 30%, and Sony gets nothing beyond whatever they made on their own title. And that PC gamer isn't buying just one game on Steam, they're buying all their games on Steam. Every purchase that would have gone through the PlayStation Store is essentially gone. Every dollar of platform revenue gone, all for the price of putting God of War on PC. And then there's PlayStation Plus, which is estimated to have 50 million subscribers, worth $4.5 billion in network service revenue. You know how you get PlayStation Plus subscribers? You need them to own a PlayStation. No console, no subscription. No subscription, no $4.5 billion bucks. Every person who decides they don't need a PlayStation 5 because the games are coming to PC anyway is a person who will never pay for PlayStation Plus, who will never buy a game through the PlayStation Store, who will never buy an expensive DualSense controller or a PlayStation Portal or a charging dock or any other accessories. And the console here is the gateway to the entire ecosystem. And Sony has been handing out reasons to skip that gateway. This is why consoles still get made. They're worth billions, even in an age where companies keep shipping middling and insufficient products. Now, does every PC gamer who bought God of War on Steam represent a lost PS5 sale? No, absolutely not. Some of those people were never going to buy a console, and some of them already own a PS5 and bought the game twice. The relationship between PC ports and console sales erosion is very complicated. We cannot pretend it's one-to-one. But Sony doesn't need it to be one-to-one. They just need to believe that at the margins, like at the edges, enough people are choosing not to buy a PlayStation because they know the game is coming to PC eventually. And if that number is meaningful enough, it threatens something worth far more. And if that number is meaningful enough, it threatens something worth far more than $1.5 billion, right? It threatens the entire ecosystem. I said before, why would Sony even consider walking away? And it's because their perception of exclusivity is actually worth more than $1.5 billion. Part 2. Truth is, the PlayStation 6 isn't coming soon. Let's think about this another way. Why else wouldn't Sony want to ship to Steam anymore? Well, because the PlayStation 6 is delayed by many years. Bloomberg reported that Sony is considering pushing back the PlayStation 6 to 2028 or even 2029. The original internal target was late 2027. And the reason behind this pushback? AI companies are eating the global supply of RAM and semiconductor chips. Prices on computer parts around the world are skyrocketing. Sony can't build the console that they want at a price consumers are willing to pay, or at least not yet. If you're behind on this news, please watch my video linked here as I explain the RAM shortage crisis. This is really important stuff. You need to know what's going on here because it doesn't look good for anybody, not just gamers. Everyone. But this all means that the PlayStation 5, which launched in November of 2020, could be Sony's only console for 8 or 9 years. The PlayStation 5 has shipped 92.2 million units as of December 2025. That's not weak, but it is trailing the PlayStation 4 by 2.2 million units at the same point in the PlayStation 4's life cycle. And the PS4 went on to sell 117 million units. Sony needs the PlayStation 5 to keep selling, not just coast by. It needs to keep going for 2, maybe 3 more years, maybe more if it goes past 2028, all with no successor on the horizon, no new hardware excitement, and no next-gen marketing push like they had with the PlayStation 3, 4, and 5. So what do you do? How do you convince people to buy a PlayStation 5 in 26, 27, and 28? You give them a reason to. And the best reason in the history of the video game industry, like the only reason that has consistently moved hardware for 40 years, is this game is only available here. That's what this is. Sony isn't pulling games from PC because they hate PC gamers. They're pulling games from PC because they need to sell consoles for 3 more years without a successor. And the only tool that works is exclusivity. And by the way, Grand Theft Auto 6 launches this November, the biggest game launch in the history of gaming, or so they say. Sony is reportedly treating it as a de facto PlayStation system seller, even though it's multi-platform. Imagine this is the pitch in mind: Wolverine in September, Grand Theft Auto 6 this fall, and none of it's coming to PC. If you want to play the biggest games in 2026, you need the box, and I don't mean Xbox. If the market expectation is just wait 2 years and it'll come to PC, then the urgency to buy a console evaporates, and Sony cannot afford evaporated urgency with potentially 3 years of the PlayStation 5 left to sell and no PlayStation 6 on the horizon. Part 3. The exclusivity argument. But there is a bigger point here, and I made it in a couple of previous videos. In a world like the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 era, exclusivity was actually a good thing, even if you personally hated it. Do you know why it was good, like from a business perspective? Because exclusivity is a competitive pressure that demands excellence. Think about what exclusivity actually meant in the past. Microsoft partnered with Bungie for Halo because Microsoft needed a game so good that people would buy an Xbox just to play it. Uncharted existed because Sony needed that for PlayStation. Zelda existed because Nintendo needed that for hardware sales. Multiple times, actually. Zelda launched the Wii and the Switch One. In years past, exclusivity was a quality mandate. You had to make something so extraordinary that a person would spend $300, $400, $500 on a console for the privilege of accessing it. That pressure produced some of the greatest games ever made, but the problem today, and another reason why Sony went multi-platform in the first place, if these companies were still making games that were genuinely great and they sold like gangbusters, they'd keep them exclusive, because great games move hardware. Great games justify platforms and ecosystems. The fact that Xbox and PlayStation have abandoned exclusivity, that's an admission that they didn't believe their own products were strong enough to be the reason someone chose their ecosystem. And people stopped choosing their ecosystems. Hardware sales were down at the end of 25. Steam and PC gaming has continued to expand, and the barrier to entry is wide open. Xbox and PlayStation, on the other hand, needing to go to Steam wasn't them answering PC gamers' calls for anti-consumerism. It was an admission of defeat. Part 4, Friends on the Other Side. Now, in fairness, I understand why PC gamers are upset. Sony spent 5 years building trust with the PC community, which created an expectation, and now they're pulling the rug. Sure, that stings, but here's the uncomfortable truth. The PC strategy, should they end it here, as Jason Schreier is hinting it will be ended? Well, it was always an experiment then. The PC ports were never day and date. They never released at the same time. There were always timed exclusives, 1 to 3 years after the PlayStation launch, and Sony was truly just testing the water. And what they found is the water is warm, but it is shallow. And the requirement to get these games shipped to PC is tedious, and it's expensive, and it's risky. You know, the risk of eroding the reason to buy or own a PlayStation at all, and this put the overall PlayStation brand position at risk. If the PC ports generated $1.5 billion total, and PlayStation Plus alone generates $4.5 billion per year, then 1 year of PlayStation Plus is worth 3 times the entire lifetime of Sony's PC experiment. The math isn't close. Sony needs to sell PlayStation 5 consoles for at least 2 or 3 more years. The PlayStation 6 isn't coming until 2028 at the earliest, maybe 2029. They're sitting at 92 million units and need to keep climbing. But think of the lineup here. Ghost of Yotei already launched and has a multiplayer coming soon. Soros hasn't gotten a PC port date yet. It probably won't now. Halo is coming to PlayStation. Gears of War is coming to PlayStation. Xbox titles are coming to PlayStation. GTA 6 drops this November and will definitely move hardware. And Wolverine is coming this September, and that's probably going to be big. Heck, I hope Insomniac listened to the fans after Spider-Man 2, because that game was not nearly as good as the previous 2 games. But this lineup only moves consoles if people can't get those experiences somewhere else. The PC game experiment was a test. The results came back 5% of console revenue, diminishing returns on sequels, and every port chipping away at the single most valuable thing Sony owns: the reason to buy a PlayStation. Now, what do I really think? Where do I really stand, right? Because this is not an endorsement of console exclusivity. This is an explanation as to why there is console exclusivity. So I will say, let them put their money where their mouth is. If they're going to go exclusive, then that means they need to focus on delivering exclusive experiences. They better get better, or no one will buy their games and no one will buy their consoles. Lots of you watching have suitable PCs for gaming, or Steam Decks, or some other handheld, or you already have a PS5, but like me, it's collecting dust because you don't have any games worth playing on it. Exclusivity demands excellence. So what I'm saying is, this puts us one step closer to a Little Big Planet remake. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire others to do so as well, and for the love of God, Cancel Disney Plus. Goodbye.